Hi. So today I'm going to talk about how your inability to say no actually leads to your issues with intimacy, commitment, or any of those avoidant traits. Basically, a lot of times your people pleasing is actually what makes you terrified of relationships. Because what happens is if you are not safe in your bones with your ability to say no, you are not going to be safe in a intimate connection at all, because the closer you get to people, the more you will have, you know your boundaries come up more. You'll have your preferences, because they're just brushing up with your edges in connection. And if you're not safe with expressing these micro no's, these little boundaries in everyday life, in interactions, what you're going to do instead is just going to go completely um, berserk and just shut out the connection entirely. And a lot of times it's always very sudden and out of nowhere. That's why you'll see people complain about avoidance, just everything's fine and then just one day they just disappear, and they just can't do it anymore even though they said nothing before and expressed nothing, or they just like disappear. It's just very sharp, the switch, and it's quite sudden, it's quite sharp, and it's also quite like it's a wall they put out. And why that happens is just this, it's this inability to be in connection in a healthy manner. What they have internalized growing up is that it's unsafe to say no. For whatever reason, that's what they have learned. And then they become quite, they also might have internalized that conflict is unsafe. So then what that translates is that, and usually this is quite unconscious, um, what that does is it's just this low level of discomfort you're consistently feeling when you're in a connection, even though there's just nothing wrong per se, but you just cannot relax and something just feels off. And then the mind tries to rationalize it in some way, just like that's why you'll see avoidance also being very like, oh, I ended things because he wore a pink shirt. It's just very absurd random things that no one would end a connection on. And but it's because the mind is grappling to make sense of the intense discomfort that the body is in. The body is in usually fight and flight just because of presence of another human being in their life in an intimate way. And it doesn't even have to be like an extreme sense, just the presence might trigger them, because the capacity for intimacy is just so low, because the intimacy just hasn't been safe for them for whatever reason. So then it isn't safe in their body to say no. So then they just to say no in a little way to set the pace. It doesn't occur to them, or they haven't learned the skills to say no in little ways. So then it's just a capital, big, bold, underlined no. That's what happens. And most of the times it's also because avoidance, as the name says, they're not just avoiding intimacy from you, it's just they're also avoiding intimacy with themselves. So most of the times they are not aware that they're feeling this intense discomfort, or they want to say no in some way, something's off, and they're not connected with their emotions or body, and so then they don't have the tools to even communicate that. um, and then that's why it happens, and that's why they're so disconnected from the boundaries that they need to express. They're so disconnected from the needs and the emotions, and that then of course, and then the mind goes overdrive, and they're just all logic. They're like, okay, I'll do that. And that what that leads is the mind in its extreme without the heart is cruel. And it's cruel to the people they're with, it's cruel to themselves as well, because they're shutting themselves off entirely. So a lot of times it's not just that they might not have the skills to verbalize a no, or set a boundary, or deal with conflict, or express needs, or any of these things, right? It's just that they themselves are just not even aware of it. It's just so um it's just disconnection with the body, disconnection with the body in a way that the sensations are not even recognized to be translated into something that could be then, communicated effectively or healthily to make intimacy possible. So yeah, if you are an avoidant, I used to be one. uh, if one of the reasons that you might find relationships extremely uncomfortable to be in, just from the beginning, even if nothing has gone wrong, and you just cannot pick it out, what is it, and you just feel so off, it's probably because you're not safe in your ability to say no. You feel like someone coming closer to you is a threat because you haven't learned that you can say no. And that your no is going to be respected. It's and not just like another, it's not just about harm. Sometimes we internalize the message that if we express a boundary, if we say no, we will be harmed. And but sometimes it's also like the no might have led to abandonment. The no might have led to like invalidation, or just like your conditional love, like you learned that you were only loved if you just said yes to everything. So then again, that prospect of intimacy then becomes a threat again, and the body's just like, something's off. And then since you're so disconnected from it, you just become weird, and you're like, yeah, I don't like how he wears his you know bracelet. Like, it's just the littlest things which make no sense, and it's just so sudden and berserk, but it's just like they're just not safe. You're just not safe in your ability to say no. So like, practice saying no slowly by slowly. Practice, getting in touch with your body. You can only be close to someone else to the proportion of how close you are with yourself. How much capacity of intimacy you have with yourself is how much you will be able to be there for others. So like, the proportion of your avoidance is also just like how proportionally avoidant you are to yourself. So then if you want to make space for someone in your life, start by making space for yourself. That's how you heal avoidance. And yeah, start saying no.